the Battle of Britain has been recognised as one of the darkest hours in British history. Protecting the lives of so many depended on the few. Made up of just under 3,000 British and Allied aircrew, this RAF unit fought together to defeat the Luftwaffe. In the words of Winston Churchill, never in the field of human conflict has so much been owed by so many to so few. But some of those few were forgotten, the Polish airmen, who gave their lives to protect British soil. For a long time they were banned from VE Day celebrations and have remained partly absent from the history books. One organisation in the UK is righting this wrong. Through tracing the history of Wing Commander Piotr Laguna, the Laguna Spitfire legacy is bringing the story of the 18,000 pilots and ground crews of the Polish Air Force back to life. But what has their journey been like, and what has this meant for the international community? The Spitfire, a pivotal part of the Allied Air Force's armoury. It was on the 5th of March 1936 that the first Spitfire prototype took to the skies. They then went on to be produced in greater numbers than any other British combat aircraft. This marvellous feat of engineering rarely graces our skies anymore, but one man wants to change this. It all began when Scott Booth, now the founder of the Laguna Spitfire project, wanted to make a new coffee table.
I've always been obsessed with Spitfires, and I got the opportunity in 2016 to fly in a two-seat Spitfire. Whilst I was there, they had a coffee table that was made of an engine similar to the one that you see here today, and it inspired me to want to make something the same. But unfortunately these things are not common at all, you just can't find them. And then 2 years later, just by pure coincidence, I managed to find an engine. I managed to get hold of it, but actually it had a lot of serial numbers on, which I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to know what the history of this engine was? And then suddenly it revealed that a treasure trove of information, which really did inspire me to want to do something more than make a coffee table.
As part of the project, Scott often sets up press conferences to get sponsors, or partners as he prefers to call them. These partners help in numerous ways, but one of the important steps at the moment is by offering funding, as this is a not-for-profit organisation. Today we have come to RAF Duxford. RAF Duxford served as a base for many of the Spitfire pilots, both Polish and British, who fought in the Battle of Britain. We can see how the project from such humble beginnings has sparked interest from journalists, historians, history fanatics and the international community, particularly the Poles. Zenon Cesarek is a first-generation Pole whose father fought in the war. He believes that the Laguna Spitfire project will finally acknowledge the invaluable Polish contribution to defeating the Luftwaffe.
It means a lot to me that it's not finally, but there is going to be more and more recognition for the Polish effort during the Second World War, which up until now has been a little bit subdued. So I'm delighted that English people, British people without Polish heritage are taking this on and are going to promote it.
So clearly Poles want their history told, and many feel they have fallen on the wrong side of history. But I want to see how far the international impact of this project really goes. So I'm travelling to France to speak to some people who were there during the excavation of P8331 back in 1986. And I'm going to visit a small war museum just outside of Calais to see if they can provide some key pieces that will help in the rebuilding of Laguna's Spitfire. In order to have permission to rebuild a Spitfire from the Civil Aviation Authority, you need as many of the original pieces of the Spitfire as possible. Scott has been trying to do this to fulfil his ambition of rebuilding Piotr Laguna's Spitfire, P8331. On this trip, Scott is hoping to exchange some propellers he has from Germany for ones he believes match P8331. This way, the museum doesn't lose out on an artefact and Scott gets one step closer to rebuilding the aeroplane. But physically exchanging these three-blade solid metal propellers was never going to be an easy task. The Musée Mémoire in Calais is housed in a concrete bunker that was built as German naval headquarters. Space was therefore tight, and navigating the narrow corridors posed quite a challenge. But this didn't stop the rooms being completely filled. Scott was thrilled to see such a large turnout from the French community at the propeller exchange. The impact the Battle of Britain had on the north of France is still noticeable today, as people who helped with the excavations of the planes in the 80s tell us.
Je signalais tout à l'heure que lorsqu'un chasseur s'écrasait, le moteur était l'élément le plus lourd dans les 600-700 kilos, quelquefois plus. Il s'enfonçait profondément et le restant de l'avion venait s'écraser derrière avec le pilote. Il nous est arrivé plusieurs fois de trouver les restes d'un pilote, avec quelquefois des choses épouvantables. On retrouvait par exemple les pieds dans les bottes.
Je me souviens de ce Spitfire, c'est que il était enterré à plusieurs mètres de profondeur et que nous avions mis en place beaucoup de moyens pour l'extraire de son carcan de terre. Et le souvenir que j'en ai, c'est toujours l'émotion quand on retrouve une épave d'avion, quel qu'il soit, et une émotion pour l'avion lui-même, mais aussi pour le malheureux qui est dedans, qui a trouvé la mort.
After scouring the museum's many cabinets, Scott was able to discover more pieces of P8331, which is crucial to getting Peter Laguna's Spitfire back in the air.
As much as I didn't spot some of the pieces in the first visitation, actually now looking at them, they all marry up with the aircraft, and we know that by the specific type of equipment that we can see here that's specific to the Spitfire that we have through the different marks. So the more that we can put together with the history, it becomes significant for us as a project.
With more pieces acquired, Scott is just one step closer to realising his dream of seeing this plane soaring the skies again. Back in the UK now, and it's clear that the story of Wing Commander Piotr Laguna has captured the hearts of the French community. But this international collaboration isn't just helpful for tracing parts of P8331, but also learning how the Polish airmen helped during the Battle of Britain. But what does this all mean for Poles based here? The Polish community is one of the largest immigrant communities here in the UK. More than 800,000 people living in Britain today were born in Poland. So, I've decided to speak to the chairman of the Polish Heritage Association. Jarek Kubaszczyk is the chairman of the association in Gloucester, where Scott lives. He believes that the Laguna project represents a large step towards recognising the Polish contribution in the Battle of Britain.
It's quite important because all the situation after the World War was very, very bad for Poland and for Poles, with the communism regime over the Poland for 45 years, and Churchill and Roosevelt were really scared of Stalin, and they unfortunately didn't allow Poles to join the parade. And it's quite important to highlight it and obviously fixed it. I think it was very, very sober for them. I think it was very sober because they were brother in arms during the war with the Brits, with the Americans and other nations. And then all the countries have their representatives during the parade, but not Poles. So it was probably sober, sad and disappointing.
But there is another important group that has significantly invested in this project. The Polish Airmen's Association was founded in June 1945 to represent all members of the Polish Air Force who served under British command during the Second World War. They believe it is important to tell the story of the Polish airmen worldwide and to future generations. Artur Bildzuk is the current chairman of the association. It has been working with Scott to promote the project and provide key contacts.
So we will help to facilitate any sort of the smoothness of getting to speak to relevant people to allow things to happen. It's telling the story of someone's passion, someone like Scott Booth, who has found this story, has discovered this, and he's now promoting it. So, of course, we support it. We're an organisation, essentially, we're the aircrew of that time. So you're telling a story on our behalf. These people, above all, did so much and often paid the highest price, as Piotr Laguna did. So it cost him his life. But his story, his life goes on through the story of the Spitfire.
But what we shouldn't forget is that behind this whole project lies a man who was not only a wing commander but a husband and a father. Piotr Laguna was the pilot that died in P8331, belonging to the famous 303 squadron. Scott was able to find the pilot from the serial number on the engine.
I had always just really seen it as the engine until that point, and it was just difficult to comprehend a pilot and what that pilot actually looked like. So it's really, as I say, quite emotional, and he looked so young in the pictures. Of course, he was only 35, so he was. But yeah, it really brings something to real life. When I got in touch with Peter Sikora, and he recommended reading the book that he's got here, I found out a lot of information about Piotr. But what he also mentioned to me is the fact that he also had contact details for the family, which I could not believe. They live in Australia, and their journey was amazing, and it was fabulous to be able to tell them that we had got hold of all the pieces of their father's Spitfire. Jan was 18 months old when he left Poland, and his father went off to war, and he never saw him again. So it was very emotional for all these years later to find out that there was some remnants of his father's history that was coming to play again 80 years later. So it was very emotional for us, and I was able to describe the last moments for his father that he never knew, and equally he was able to relay conversations about his own journey and stories that he heard from his mother and his sister about his father, which were equally really emotional. So it brought us very close, even so we'd never met, and we lived on the opposite side of the planet.
After speaking with Scott, I knew I had to reach out to Jan. He is now 80 and living in Australia. I wanted to find out what his life had been like and what it was like growing up without a father, but also what this project had meant to him and to his family.
One of the greatest regrets of my life is that I didn't get my mother to tape her life. You know, it would have been absolutely fascinating. She used to talk about it a bit, but not all that much. And I was too stupid to record it all because it was all just a part of my life. And I sort of thought, well, she's going to live forever, and you know.
Yeah.
But we were in a camp. We travelled to East Poland, close to the Russian border. When the war broke out, my father got us to go there because the Germans and the Russians had a pact that they would not fight. So he thought we'd be safer there. And as a matter of fact, he got a truck, sent a truck to pick us up, to take us there. And my mother said his plane flew over and he dipped his wings. And that was the last time she saw him.
What did it feel like when Scott first got in contact with you and told you that he'd found these things?
I know. The first thing I remember, which, you know, hit me really big time, was seeing the picture of the engine coming out of the dirt, pulled up by the tractor. And that was just quite overwhelming, really. And it almost made me feel exactly as I would have felt if I'd seen him crash there. You know, seeing that engine there was just so close. It was like I was there. So, you know, I just cried, and it was quite overwhelming, really, quite overwhelming. But then after, when the realization hit as to what it actually all was, I was really happy because I felt very close to him.
Did you feel like you sort of got part of your dad back through this project that Scott started up?
Exactly, very much so. It's like Scott channeled him. It was uncanny. Now he is getting recognition, and all the Poles are getting a recognition as a result of this.
This project shows how one man's passion for Spitfires has brought attention to the forgotten few from the Battle of Britain. It has brought a man back to life, brought a father back to a son, and it has united countries from around the world. With more developments, we hope that Spitfire P8331 will soon fly the sky again in memory of Piotr Laguna and other fallen pilots.
Behind each name, a story lies of bravery in summer skies, though many brave unwritten tales were simply told in vapor trails. Many now lie in sacred graves, and many rest beneath the waves. Outnumbered, every day they flew. Remember here as just the few.